What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily, and in this video, we are checking out the new Samsung Galaxy A17 5G. Yes, another year, another new series of A-series devices. Okay, technically, this phone was announced in August of last year, but I like to align the new iterations with the new year, since the releases are sort of staggered all around the world anyway, and most people will find this phone as a new to them 2026 option. I mean, here in the US, this phone wasn't officially released until January 7th, so most carriers here are just now starting to sell it, and most people may not have even known about it yet. This is somehow already the 8th iteration of this double-digit tier of A series if you start with the A10, A10, A11, A12, 13, and so on. And believe it or not, this is almost always Samsung's best-selling device for the year. It's not the S series or the Ultra, it's certainly not the foldables, it's the A17. And for 2026, I would be willing to bet this A17 will earn that crown once again. Why? Well, this is a really affordable option that tends to offer the same familiar Samsung experience for a fraction of the price of the flagships. For most people who use their phones for simple, everyday stuff, or for folks who like a deal from their carrier, or for anyone else who just isn't down to spend $700, $800, or $1,000 on a phone, this has been the device that checks those boxes. This phone certainly has its compromises, of course. You don't get to spend a fraction of the price without a few missing features, but I actually think for a vast majority of the general population, this is just about all the smartphone a person could need. So I'm going to fill you in on everything you need to know about this new A17. I'll talk about what's new, what's remained the same, and offer a few other thoughts so that you can decide if maybe this will be your next smartphone. But first things first, let me just quickly show you what comes inside the box, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty that makes up Samsung's most popular device. We do get a fresh new look for the packaging here, and I should just quickly mention that this is the A17 5G. As has been the case in years past, there also seems to be an A17 4G LTE floating around in some parts of the world. Fortunately, this year, the only difference is in the processor and obviously network connectivity. Everything else between the A17 4G and A17 5G appears to be exactly the same, but just be sure if you're looking online or in stores that you are getting the right A17, which for most people is this A17 5G. On the side of the box here, for the first time in a while, Samsung actually highlights a couple features this phone offers. A slim 7.5mm design, a 50 megapixel camera with optical image stabilization, and 6 OS/security updates. Now, I don't know if those are the three features I would have chosen to advertise for this phone, but I'll be sure to talk more about that trio throughout the video as well. So slicing into the box here and yanking off the lid, the first thing you'll get is the phone itself, all wrapped up nicely. Underneath it, there's, well, nothing at all, just the packaging, but stuck inside the lid, there still is the small packet of stuff, a SIM ejector tool on the outside, and then a stack of paperwork with some instructions, along with a USB-C cable for charging, and that's everything included with this phone. As I got it unwrapped here for the very first time, I will just say that, yeah, this phone felt maybe a little thinner or slimmer, which is apparently a feature or selling point nowadays for a number of devices, and it looks pretty nice too, but it did struggle to get going. Out of the box with a fresh setup, no transferring of data, this poor thing could barely load the weather and was bogged down by 30-something Play Store apps being updated and 40-something Galaxy Store apps installing and multiple One UI updates it needed to run through. But 45 minutes later, it was finally up to date and ready to roll. Now, the full retail price for this A17 5G is $199 unlocked directly from Samsung. Samsung. Right now, Samsung is taking $30 off for a limited time, probably just a launch promotion for the first few weeks, but most people will probably buy this phone from their carriers at a steep discount with some sort of service contract. For example, Verizon offers this phone for $0 a month. Boost Mobile sells it for $69 upfront with a qualifying plan. It's free from Metro by T-Mobile if you're a new customer. Basically, this phone is going to be sold everywhere by everyone, and I would imagine very few people will actually pay full price, especially as we head into the summertime. Physically, at least from the front, this is a very familiar looking phone. At 6.7 inches, it's not only the same size as last year, but basically the same size as all the other A-series phones you can think of from the last couple of years. It still rocks a pretty old school look. There's a selfie camera notch up top, a big bottom chin, and thick, noticeable black borders that increase the phone's overall footprint without offering any more screen real estate. It's very much the same budget A-series design you may already be familiar with, but it is a little disappointing to still see a phone like this in 2026. Around back, there's a slight redesign with the camera layout, but everything else is relatively unchanged. The back cover is plastic, and very obviously so, you feel that. The sides and frame are a color-matched plastic too. They feel more like metal though. The color options this year are pretty dull: black, gray, and then this blue, which yet again is a slightly different shade of blue than all the other different shades of blue that Samsung offers in the S series, their foldables, even the FE. I have no idea why Samsung is so inconsistent with their colors. It's truly bizarre. And that camera module redesign you might recognize from last year's higher tier A-series phones, the A26, 36, and 56. So this now aligns with those phones, but these A-series devices as a whole are now obviously different design-wise from the S-series flagships, at least the S25s. As for its thinness, which you saw was the first advertised selling point or standout feature for this phone, well, yeah, it's about 0.4 of a millimeter thinner than last year's A16, but not nearly as thin as, say, the S25 Edge. And I guess in the hand, it's a little more comfortable to hold. I mean, you can kind of feel this phone is a little thinner, and perhaps Samsung and some other companies are still trying to push being thin as some sort of feature, but I'm going to just say that the slim 7.5 millimeter design probably isn't something worth highlighting. On the left side here, you still get a dual purpose SIM card tray with microSD card support. So either 2 physical SIMs or 1 SIM, 1 SD card. And I don't know of any A17 variants that support eSIM. The storage options you'll see this year for this phone are 128 gigs or 256 gigs, same as last year, which honestly isn't too terrible for a cheaper device. This phone still comes pre-installed with approximately 967 different Samsung and Google apps you might want to sift through to claw back some of that storage, but I think this is a solid combo of SD card support and onboard capacity. The right side has the volume buttons and power button, which doubles as your physical fingerprint sensor, and I still like this as an option, even though it too feels like it's 100 years old at this point, just like the screen design. There's face unlock support as well, and you can pretty much get into the phone instantly either way. Up at the top, you'll find, well, basically nothing, just a microphone hole, and at the bottom, nearly nothing. A lonely USB-C port, a small single speaker, and a big old blank space where a headphone jack used to live a long time ago. Speaking of the speakers, or speaker, yeah, just the one single bottom loudspeaker on this phone, which is a bummer. The earpiece up at the top is just the earpiece for phone calls. It's not the secondary or dual speaker like on most other phones. Really disappointing, to be honest, since that seems like such an inexpensive and well-appreciated feature, almost a given on 95% of other smartphones nowadays. And I do think the out loud listening sort of suffers. Now, the display on this new A17 5G, aside from looking pretty dated, like I said, is also the same spec as last year, and actually some previous years too. It hasn't seen a substantial upgrade since the A15. This is still a 1080p resolution Super AMOLED panel with a 90 Hz refresh rate, 2340 by 1080 for about 385 pixels per inch, which is sharp enough QHD resolution hasn't seemed to have caught on as a standard smartphone feature. The Super AMOLED panel peaks at around 800 nits of max brightness, which no matter how you swing it is just not very bright at all. Interestingly enough, the front glass covering this display is supposedly now Gorilla Glass Victus, a newer, tougher, and maybe less glare-prone variety, but you can see that even my camera has a hard time focusing on the actual screen and not my ugly mug in the reflection. I think the color and overall viewing experience with the AMOLED panel in particular looks really nice, but the low brightness levels and high glare definitely take away from that quite a bit. And normally I would praise getting this sort of screen setup on a sub $200 device. I said in the past that the screen is one of the top reasons to consider this phone, but it hasn't changed in 3 years now. And I think the bare minimum standard for smartphones in 2026 should be higher than this, especially the refresh rate. 90 Hz is still exponentially better than 60 Hz. It's very noticeable, but it feels like a half step still, or a purposeful compromise to entice you to jump up a rung or two on the smartphone ladder. I get that there needs to be a few reasons to upgrade to a higher end phone still, but there also needs to be a reason to upgrade to a new phone from the previous version. The screen is like the essence of the phone itself, and there is a lot of room to upgrade here, so I'm surprised Samsung hasn't just made the leap to a brighter 120 Hz screen that maybe they could use across multiple other devices as the sort of bare minimum standard now. Pair all those thoughts with the big black bezels that frame the whole thing, and I do think there's actually a lot here that can be improved. Something else that did not change with this new A17 is the processor that powers it, and I can already hear the collective groans coming from Samsung A-series fans for this. We once again get Samsung's Exynos 1330 chip, which I actually didn't realize until I reread the stats. This is now a nearly 3-year-old component. It's paired with either 4, 6, or up to 8 gigabytes of RAM. Mine, you can see, has 6 gigs, and I have a few thoughts on this. One of the reasons why Samsung's A-series phones are such a good value is simply because Samsung tends to reuse some parts and some pieces from other phones, previous phones, to save money. They pick from the parts bin, so to speak, and put together something different and call it a new budget option. They sometimes do that even for phones of the same model for the next year, and this is a prime example of that. To save money, keep the cost down, or simply because they made so many, Samsung stuck the same processor inside here. And if you need a refresher, here are the Geekbench performance scores, but this phone is no faster or any more powerful than last year's A16, which honestly is kind of a shame, and even Samsung avoids mentioning speed or performance in their own advertising materials for this phone. The only thing they mention is 6 OS/security updates, which means this phone should see Android 21, if I've counted correctly, and One UI 13, assuming that the numbers stay in order. So it's nice to know that if you buy this phone today, tomorrow, next year, or in 2029, you'll at least see some new software features, security patches, and all the latest apps and updates. It's, as I often say, a decent long-term investment if you prefer to keep your phones for a few years, which most people tend to do now anyway. The problem is that technically, this phone is already starting 3 years behind, or 3 years old, with its Exynos processor. And while the phone functions just fine, and most people probably don't keep up with what specific processor is inside anyway, it's just the principle of the thing. I always feel a little yucky knowing that certain components or features of a phone are the exact same as the previous year, especially when that feature or component is so important. And if you can't say that the phone performs better or is any faster, then what can you say? Remember, we also can't say that the viewing experience is any different either, for the most part. I guess they really were stretching with those on-the-box features that they slapped on there. Also, while this phone gets a big size 5000 mAh battery inside and 25 watt wired fast charging, those are both the same specs as last year too. A phone like this, assuming most people don't push it too hard, can easily last at least a day on a single charge, which is great. And I still firmly believe this is the phone for folks who don't go too crazy with their smartphones. Phone calls, text messages, YouTube watching, TikTok scrolling, a couple pictures from time to time, Google Maps, and internet searching. If you're not a huge gamer, you're not editing videos, not streaming on Instagram for hours on end, and not filming feature movies, this is more than enough phone for the day's tasks. I sort of wish it had wireless charging. The higher tier A series phones got that feature last year. I also feel like I'd rather have an even bigger battery instead of this phone feeling thin or getting slimmer, missing a fraction of a millimeter, just so Samsung can call being thin a feature. Finally, while the rear camera module got a refresh visually to align with the rest of the A series phones from last year, the actual lens hardware isn't any different. The trio of lenses underneath that new dark one-piece camera cover is the same 50 megapixel main lens, 5 megapixel ultra wide, and 2 megapixel macro that graced last year's A16. The 13 megapixel selfie camera seems to be the same lens too up front, and inside the camera app, this is the typical low-tier A-series camera setup that provides the core features, a handful of extras, some helpful, some gimmicky, but certainly falls short of any mid-tier or flagship phone whose camera setup is usually the main focus. The wide-angle lens is great, a must-have in my opinion, and any phone that lacks that is a phone I can't be seen using. The 10 times digital zoom is, well, it's 10 times digital zoom, so it's there, but it's not very good, and there's no hardware to help it zoom better like on higher-end phones. There's a 50 megapixel photo mode, there's portrait pictures. The standalone macro mode is also there, just hidden within the extra options off to the side, which is fine by me. I don't hardly consider the tertiary macro lens to even be a worthwhile add-on nowadays. The OIS camera feature advertised on the box is optical image stabilization for photo and video, so you should see sharper, less blurry shots and much smoother videos. And when I do my A16 versus A17 comparison, that will certainly be something I focus on, since, well, it's pretty much the only other thing that's different between last year's phone and this one. For as critical as I am of this camera setup, or at least as I seem, this phone takes a surprisingly good-looking shot, both with the selfie lens and the rear camera setup. There's a lot more detail in every picture than you might expect. You can see all my wrinkles and imperfections. The color looks good too. Each shot is super consistent. Again, I'd assume that if you have this phone, photography probably isn't your full-time job, but for the instances where you do want to snap a picture in the moment, this is a far cry from the budget phones of years past that had very subpar camera setups. This is a perfectly fine point-and-shoot setup that can certainly get the job done. If you're keeping score, this new Samsung Galaxy A17 5G has basically 4 new features or changes that separate it from last year's A16. It's a thinner phone, which, as you know in today's world, is a must-have. I'm being sarcastic, obviously. It's been slightly redesigned with new front glass and a camera module that's consistent now with its higher-end brethren. It's got OIS, or optical image stabilization, for a slightly smoother camera experience, and the box is different with its new A17 name and branding. Alright, that last one is sort of a cop-out, but yeah, this new A17 really isn't too new at all. And I guess that shouldn't come as a big surprise. While Samsung and most everyone else keeps releasing new phones year after year, it seems like true upgrades happen only every other year. So maybe we should be waiting for the A18. But what do you guys think? Is the A17 worth getting this year? Are you keeping your A16? Or are you coming from something even older? Maybe this is actually the substantial upgrade you've been waiting for the last few years. Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.